DeKalb all week, Tony?
No, sir. I'm heading north tomorrow.
That's good. That's good.
Never been there.
How you doing, Bill?
Good, Jerry, you?
I
I saw your lovely bride this afternoon.
Pardon?
I said, I saw your lovely bride this afternoon. I saw your bride this
Oh,
afternoon.
yes, yeah. She told me that.
I said to her,
I
just
just
tell
called her
Jerry,
and I
bring
said, I'll
it.
see you when I see you.
I said, tell Jerry, bring it. He's gone already.
I haven't seen her since this morning.
That's kind of
What? Okay, I better put this on so it doesn't ring on me.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special committee of the whole meeting of the DeKalb City Council, June 18, 2018. Just a housekeeping item for anyone who would like to speak to any item on the agenda tonight, and we do have several budget items plus a city manager search item. I'd ask that you fill a speaker request form out. They're found in the foyer in the back, and give that to Shelley Jurczyk, who is our deputy city clerk this evening. Shelley, if you would call the roll, please.
Jacobson, Fanouken,
Here.
Marquardt,
Here.
Fagan,
Here.
Noriko,
Here.
Verbic,
Here.
Faber,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. Before we move on to our first consideration this evening, I would like to see if anyone in the audience, we don't have a big audience tonight, would like to speak to any item not listed on the agenda. If not, thank you very much. We'll move then on to item C under the agenda, and that is considerations. City manager search, we continue that process. This is the hybrid recruitment process. And to get the conversation started, I'd like to call on our Human Resources Director, Chris Randall. Chris?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at our June 11 City Council meeting, when we presented the hybrid model to the City Council, Alderman Fanouken asked staff to provide Council with additional information regarding the GovHR scope of work related to the recruitment process. Heidi Voorhees, which is the president of the GovHR, she prepared a detailed description that's provided in your packet in a letter dated June 12. She provided information regarding assistance with access to qualified candidates through their database with thousands of applicants, to create a profile by conducting a one-on-one meeting with each member of the council, department heads, and any stakeholders that the council designates. This is typically 2 full days of work and 1 evening. To direct advertisement and marketing on a regional or national scope for review of a list of the advertisement sources. It's also included in your packet. In GovHR, it's able to obtain some exclusive discounted fees due to the volume of advertisement that they do. And at the direction of Alderman Fanouken, she also provided a description regarding her services in evaluating and pre-screening candidates, which consists of an objective third-party assessment of candidates' skills, abilities, as well as professional demeanor. They pre-screen applicants in a Skype or FaceTime kind of format for about an hour each, and they usually interview 15 to 20 candidates as part of the process or based upon the number of qualified applicants. And for each candidate, they also conduct a preliminary reference call and a social media and print media search, and all of this is combined and provided to council. Obviously, this process does not preclude council to still evaluate all the other applications, but that's part of what they do on the screening of the candidates. And everything else, as outlined in your memo, will be conducted in-house with our hybrid model. And that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Yes, I do, and then we'll turn it over here to our alderman. Under financial impact, you said the cost of the search will depend on which firm the council chooses. We have chosen the firm, have we not?
Yes, yeah, it was.
So that was simply a typo or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It was a
Yep.
test, Mayor, to see your reading, and you passed.
I beg your pardon?
It was a test to see if you read, and you passed.
I passed by reading the agenda?
There you caught it.
Yeah, I caught it, okay, I'm sorry. The other question I had was, under the GovHR breakout, I think we had talked the other day, it would be going to be between $10,000 and $11,000. Well, wouldn't you know, it is right at $11,000. My question is under the advertising sources and estimated costs, which were $2,670, that's in addition to the,
No, that's the estimated 3,000. So it could be a little bit less.
oh, I see, so
Yeah.
that's included in that $3,000 figure.
Correct,
So we
yes.
don't have to add that $2,670 onto the $3,000?
No, they provided a $3,000 estimated cost.
Okay.
Just in case, for instance, if we want them to do the American Society for Public Administration, so they can do that work and they just include it on a fee. But the
Okay, good.
$3,000 includes that.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
we could cherry pick if we wanted to.
Yes.
The,
Yeah.
the actual organization who would be offering the ad.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's enough for me, I guess. Any additional comments or questions of Chris? Alderman Fanouken.
Well, as Chris stated, that I'm the one who's really asked about getting them to do a lot of the pre-qualifications for us. I'd just like to talk about that again, how important I think it is in terms of limiting the amount of staff time, limiting some of the potential liability we might see, and we can determine how many of the qualified candidates we want to see. And I'm just going to use some rough numbers here. Let's just, last time we got 57 applications. I think they gave us 12 candidates for us to review. Now, we could ask for that number to be higher. We could ask for 25, with us also receiving the other ones for us to peruse at our own time. But I think that at least gives us a lead on who they consider the top candidates are and saves us some of that legwork. I think that's just a part of it, so.
Yeah, the consensus I got last time, Bill, was that most of the council felt comfortable in at least knowing who those 57 are, whoever, and we could peruse those. And if by chance we saw one or two that we really liked and they weren't in the 10 selected by HR Gov, perhaps we could ask them then to include those. Is that your thought?
That's my thought, too, but I also
Yeah.
think that in conjunction with Alderman Jacobson's comments last week and a further conversation I'm having with him, I think he'd like to see more than the 12 to 15 that we would get. I think in their memo, they mentioned up to 20, and I think 20 may be a good number, at least as a jump-off discussion, that we have them do that more thorough background check and they forward to us. And then if there's any beyond those 20 that we'd like to look at, we can then do that ourselves, too.
Okay, so you were pretty satisfied with the breakout and the verbiage that GovHR gave us?
I am.
Yeah, good, okay. Well, let's see if there's some consensus. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Norrico.
Having spent a career handling at least some of this work, I concur with Alderman Fanouken's comments that it would facilitate the process for us to have that initial screening done, get a reasonable number, 20, 25, applications and resume materials to review. I think, obviously, much of it depends upon how many candidates come forward, and I'm hoping we have that many, given what you've said and what was commented in some of the firm material. It's a very competitive market. So-
Indeed. Yeah, and another advantage using this process is that gives the council another layer of protection against any claims for discriminatory hiring practices. So,
Alderman Favor.
Yeah, I like the idea of the pre-screening. I like the idea of being able to, as well, have access to all the resumes, just in case, you want to go through and see if there were any that were, not included in the pre-screen or that were eliminated in that phase that might look promising. So I am also in favor of that hybrid and having the pre-screening.
yeah, you absolutely have access to all. Remember, the recruitment is the City of DeKalb. The recruitment, they're just facilitating, so you will have access to all the information. I'm making copious notes, so I know what to ask them when they come.
Alderman Verby.
I also believe that the number of applicants will vary depending on the qualifications that we set forth. So, again, I think that's a discussion we should have before any search firm or our staff get too far along in the process.
And I think that's scheduled for our next committee of the whole, is it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things, like we talked last meeting. One is what Dean is going to present next week, because encompass the change of the municipal code, if that's what the council wants to do. But as part of the position profile, that's what the Heidi and her company will do. She will meet with each one of you to talk about what are those skills and what kind of management styles are you looking for. And then she will prepare a report and provide it to council before, obviously, we move forward with any advertisement. And at that point, too, she will be asking, Mayor, if there's any other stakeholders and who would you like to participate. That's not an interview. It's just as, what would you like the city manager for the City of DeKalb? What are the characteristics you're looking for? So that's all of the preliminary work. So you have the position profile, so then they screen, and then we have the interview, and we can get some more feedback from whoever you would like to include.
Yeah, the boilerplate rules, not rules, but points under our municipal code, under the duties of the city manager, are there for anybody to take a look at.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we've all taken a look at. And what section of the municipal code is that? 13
Is that
point?
307 and 308?
Yeah, okay, very good. So anybody who wants to see what we have right now written down as the points of our city manager, the duties of the city manager, should take a look at that. Yes, Mike?
Would it not be more efficient for them to meet with all of us at once in a public setting?
It's your choice.
Rather than one-on-one?
It will be your choice.
That would be my
She can do
preference.
both, yes.
Okay.
You just need, obviously, abide by the Open Meetings Act, obviously, but yes, absolutely, it will be the choice, one-on-one or group meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and something like that, I would think you'd want in a public meeting, not an executive session or something like that. Because you're not talking about any specific individual.
Right, it definitely wouldn't be an executive session, Mayor. It would, but Heidi is offering her services to meet one-on-one with city council, as well as publicly, if that's what you choose. So
Right.
both options are available to you, but no, this is not something that Heidi would discuss in an executive session.
Right. Good, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Any thoughts from the audience on this particular search? If not, then Chris, thank you. I think the terminology I used last time was marching orders, and I think you have yours now as it relates to what we will discuss at our next council meeting.
Yes, so I will be preparing a resolution for the June 25th meeting, authorizing the agreement with GovHR as proposed on their June 12 memorandum. And then I will get some more information from you, Mayor. How would you like to proceed with the meetings and one-on-ones and group meetings? So we will all work together through the search team to get all of those logistics worked.
Okay. So we'll vote on this at the
On the
council?
next meeting.
At the council meeting?
Yes,
right,
yeah.
okay.
Today, I just need my marching orders, and next Monday,
Yeah.
you will put your stamp of approval.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's move along to budget workshop. And before we do that, I'd like to call on our city manager, interim city manager, Patty Hoppenstedt. I know Patty wanted to make a few comments tonight. Patty?
I did. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and the community. As everyone knows, back in March, I let the City Council know that my family has chosen to relocate to Tennessee due to a great opportunity for my husband and his work. So I had stated that sometime in June, between the 15th and the 28th. Well, I did inform the mayor and Molly and the executive staff that Friday will be my last day. So this Friday, I will be packing up the car and heading towards Tennessee. And I just wanted to take a few moments to thank the City Council for, one, the opportunity to serve as the Assistant City Manager, and two, for allowing me to serve as the interim city manager. I am extremely proud of the work that everyone has done. I'm very grateful for all the work that you do as council members. It's not an easy job, but it's definitely a volunteer position that is critical as the city continues to move forward and grow and provide the best quality of life for the residents. And I want to thank, in addition to the City Council, all city staff for their support, their dedication, their commitment, and I can honestly say that I've never worked with a more dedicated, professional group of individuals, and I leave here so honored to have met every single one of our elected officials as well as our city staff, and specifically to the executive team. All the department heads have been phenomenal. They truly are experts in their own fields, and Mayor, you and the council and the community can rest assured that Molly is ready for the task as the next interim city manager. We've been working very closely together, and she's definitely has the passion and dedication and commitment to fill this role. So I leave the city in good hands, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the time that you've allowed me to serve this community.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move right along. Number 2 on our agenda tonight is our budget workshop. Our first item is a service level review of our fire department, and I'm going to ask our Deputy Fire Chief, Jeff McMaster, to speak to this item. Jeff, hi.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff, residents of DeKalb. We thank you for the opportunity on behalf of Fire Chief Eric Hicks to provide our service level, our annual report, and budget review for 2017 and 2018. Everything that we'll be reviewing tonight is in the annual report and in the council memo. Because we're culminating several presentations into one, this presentation will take approximately 30 minutes. We welcome any questions, and we'll get started. So first of all, to start out with, your fire department is comprised of 53 sworn personnel. And the way our stations are broken out is into 3 districts within the city of DeKalb. We have Station 1, which services the central and northeast. We have the Station 2, which services the south side, and Station 3, which services the northwest side. We are also contracted by NIU for EMS, fire, and rescue services, and also the DeKalb Fire Protection District. As you look at our districts, Station 3 traditionally is our busiest station, and that trend continues. As you could see that we have, incidents by fire station, Station 3 being the busiest, followed up by Station 1, and then Station 2 is the third busiest. When you take a look at the incidents and what we run, as you can see in the gray area, 74% of what we run are EMS and rescue. That is by far our biggest bulk of calls. We also have other hazardous conditions such as electrical, overheated motors, anything of that such. We have a lot of good intent calls, which people are calling in different types of emergencies that they think are important to the community. False alarms, which we'll talk about later on in this presentation, is much of what we do. And then of course, structure fires and other hazardous conditions. But 74% is EMS, and that is by far what we run. Now, fire suppression is a tiered system, or a tiered response. Anything from a carbon monoxide call to a sparking outlet we would send a fire engine and an ambulance. If we get a report of a confirmed structure fire or smell of smoke in the building, we'll send a full complement of fire apparatus, which is 2 engines, a truck, an ambulance, a shift commander, to take care of that incident. In 2017, we did have several civilian injuries, and we did experience 1 fire fatality within the city. Our number of incidents, as you can see, our high water mark was in 2012, where we had, as far as fire incidents go, we had 213. That has plateaued or slightly decreased. What we contribute this to is that in our fire education or safety education efforts and our community risk reduction, such as various fire inspections, life safety inspections, and commercial building inspections. Emergency medical calls, we run ambulance calls constantly. And you could see here by this slide, we all constantly have ambulances on the road. We do have 53 paramedics and 6 ambulances, 3 of them which are staffed or run full-time. The other 3 are reserved. Now, we do break up our ambulance calls into three different types of ambulance calls, and then we have refusals. What you'll see there at 39% are our BLS calls, basic life support. Somebody severely sprains an ankle, they cannot walk. We'll arrive on scene, we'll split the extremity, and we'll take them to the hospital. That's a basic life support service that we give them. Then you have ALS, advanced life support. This is where we give advanced care to help the patient out. ALS 1 is 44% of our calls. ALS 1 constitutes giving the person oxygen, giving them an ECG or an echocardiogram, and then maybe 1 medication. While ALS 2, that is a much more advanced care in which we'll give them oxygen, a heart monitor, and several medications, such as if someone is experiencing a severe heart attack. And then we have refusals. There are at times where people call for an ambulance, and then after an evaluation, they decide they do not want to go to the hospital. You can see that 77% of all patients that we see, we do transport to the hospital. 8% of the patients that we see receive some type of treatment, but then refuse transport, and that is allowable. So, for example, if there is a diabetic, they're not feeling well, we give them glucose, and then once they become alert and oriented and they're sure that they're fine, they can refuse transport to the hospital. So that's what the treat and no transport service that we do provide. When you take a look at our call volume, you could see the trend line. We have consistently have trend upward. You can see that last year we ran 5584 calls, and then in 2016 and 2017 we ran 5573. Okay. At this time, as we continue to trend upward, you can see that in this graph we plateau, we spike, we plateau, and we spike, and that just seems what we do for the last 25 years. At this time, we are experiencing almost 300 more calls this time right now than we did last year. So what you will probably see in next year's presentation, you're going to see another significant spike, almost bringing us up to 5,800 calls. Incidents by month. You can see that October is our busiest month. We average about 450 calls per month. However, September and October are by far our busiest months. Days of the week, Tuesdays are our busiest day, followed up by Thursdays and Saturdays. Incidents by time of day. You could see that we are a 24-hour fire department, which means that when some jurisdictions, their day is busy, and then in the evenings they slow down. Not for the DeKalb Fire Department. We're busy in the middle of the day when you see where you see the number 13, okay, 1,300 hours or 1 p.m. We're busy in the middle of the day. But then when you start getting into the evening, starting around 8 p.m., we continue to be busy, and then we usually stay busy until about 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's where we die down. So DeKalb Fire Department does run 24 hours a day. Just a couple more graphs here. Our total responses you saw at 5573. Our EMS responses, as you can see, have continuously inclined, and then we have plateaued. And then our fire and our non-fire, which is actual fire responses plus our plus non-emergent, non-fire calls, such as like sparking outlets and carbon monoxide calls. Requests by services by year and type. This is just another graph just to show you that over the last 5 years, fire has continued, it started to go up and has plateaued. Overpressurization has increased. Our EMS is what we keep seeing increasing and is increasing at this time for our totals of 5573. Our 30-year growth, and what this takes into account is not only our services starting in 1985, but up through to 2017, but also our staffing. So in 1985, we're just over 2,000 calls. And as you can see, in year 2000 is when we really started to jump up. Now in 1994 is when we opened up Station 3. So that's why you see the number of stations go from 2 to 3 was in 1994. And you've seen our call volume continuously rise. Also, our chief officers have always been at 3. You see in 2010, we were down to 1 chief officer running the fire department. We kind of consider that the lean years for the city. And right now, we are back up to 3 fire chiefs. Shift personnel climbed and then plateaued. And then as you see down in the civilian staff, we always had 2 full-time staff. In 2010, during the lean years, we were down to 1 civilian staff member. At this time in 2017, we have 1.75 civilian staff. What does that mean? We have 1 full-time, we have 1 part-time, and then we have 1 NIU a grad student who is working in our office for the 1.75. Our staffing comparison. Last year we did a staffing comparison, and we took cities that have similar demographics, similar populations, and then we also took other communities that have universities in them. And as you can see, when you take in the amount of calls, the sworn personnel, and their population, DeKalb is right in the middle. And what we have is what we found is we have 1.29 firefighters per 1,000, and that's for in the city of DeKalb. Special teams. Special teams is also another service that we provide to the community and the surrounding area. We have hazardous materials, technical rescue, and aircraft rescue and firefighting. Now, our hazardous materials team and our technical rescue team, they are state deployable, which means they are trained and equipped and recognized by the state that not only will they respond in DeKalb and DeKalb County, but they can respond anywhere needed within the state. And if needed, they can even respond out of state. Our aircraft rescue and firefighting is committed to DeKalb Taylor Municipal Airport. Hazmat. We have 11 members who are trained to the technician level. And what technician level means is that these particular firefighters, they can go in offensively and take care of a hazardous material situation, whether it's turning a valve, plugging a leak in a pipe. but they can actively go in and take care of that in their level A suits, as you see in the picture. All of your DeKalb firefighters are trained to the operations level, which means that they can do things in a defensive stance. They can dike and dam, and they can isolate, evacuate, and identify the hazardous materials. So that's the difference in the hazardous materials world. Technical rescue, we have 14 members who are trained to the technician level. And what technical rescue is high angle, so if someone is trapped on a tower, if they're in a confined space, trench collapse, structural collapse, or grain bin entrapment. So those are the different disciplines of technical rescue, something higher than what we have equipped on our fire engines. Aircraft rescue and firefighting, responsible for DeKalb Airport, for EMS, rescue, hazardous materials, whatever is needed out there, including the aircraft emergencies. Our ARF truck is stationed at the airport, however, is not staffed. So we do have a response plan that in the event there is an aircraft emergency, our firefighters go, staff the crash vehicle, and respond to the emergency. Training is very important to the fire service. This is what keeps us sharp and ready in the event of that emergency. With all the disciplines that we do, we have to constantly revisit the mental and physical aspects of our job. So we do extensive amount of training in our fire department. As you can see, over 20,000 hours of training was completed by DeKalb firefighters, with over 19,000 of those hours in station on their duty days. 56 training evolutions happened outside of the fire department, where we will send firefighters and fire officers to different fire academies in the area for specialized training. The bottom portion of this slide shows our budget throughout the years. Starting in 2006, administrative training was at 11,000. You saw there was a dip in 2012, and it started to come back in 2015. Operationally, what you've seen is in 2006, we had over $82,000 in our training budget. You saw that start to decline at our low water mark in 2015. In 2018, you can see that trend has gone up. And the reason why that trend has gone up is because extra funds were given to the fire department for special training for our special teams. Our original team members from our special teams are retiring or close to retirement. We have to start infusing our special teams, our hazmat and technical rescue, with fresh firefighters, fresh blood. So thank you to the council and to the mayor for approving that, and that's why you see that number in our operations budget going up. Fire prevention or community risk reduction. This is at the heart of what the fire department does. Not only do we respond to the emergency incidents, but we want to prevent these from happening through education. A lot of what we do is inspections, in which you can see that some of them are done by the fire prevention officer, while many of them are done by our firefighters while on duty through the commercial and industrial building inspection program. There's also fire suppression system testing, plan reviews that the fire department does provide. Some accomplishments that the fire department is proud of is we assisted the City of DeKalb Building Board of Appeals in the implementation and adoption of the 2015 international codes. I think that was a great step for the City of DeKalb to really fortify safety within our community. Also, we continued the 7G inspection program, and 7G is where we, at a lower agreed price, off-duty firefighters perform initial and follow-up inspections in commercial and industrial buildings. So we are still continuing that. Also, the fire department takes a very hands-on approach to assisting those who have been stricken by a fire or a flood or some other disaster. Post-incident, we will help them get back on their feet as far as arranging additional, with the Red Cross, other living arrangements, retrieving their belongings, giving them advice on how to take care of their belongings or anything else. A little bit about our fire prevention officer. Traditionally, the fire prevention officer has been housed at the fire department. However, in 2017, the fire prevention officer moved to City Hall and became part of the Community Development Department, specifically through the Buildings and Code Compliance Division within Community Development. The fire prevention officer is supervised by the chief building officer and also by the fire chief. However, even though the fire prevention officer is in the Community Development Department, all the expenses associated with that position does come through the fire department budget. So including salary, overtime, contractual benefits, the vehicle, and uniforms. Now, even though with the void of the fire prevention officer moving to City Hall, fire administration and the firefighters did have to take care of the tasks that the fire prevention officer did fulfill within the fire department. So we're still working with that. Fire investigation. The state of Illinois requires that all fires are investigated in some shape, way, or form. For minor fires, our company officers can definitely handle that task. However, we do have a 6-person fire investigation team that deals with arsons and major structure fires. Last year, we experienced $1.7 million in fire loss within over $17 million worth of value property. So those firefighters, they stay afterwards, they investigate and make the reports. They also work with other entities such as the Office of the State Fire Marshal, DeKalb Police, or the ATF. So they do work with other entities. Our Youth Firesetter Intervention Program, we do have 6 firefighters that are certified by the state. It's through the State Fire Marshal's office. And this program provides assistance and fire education and intervention to children at risk of fire setting and also assisting their families. Public education. We strive to give as much public education as we possibly can to the citizens and visitors of DeKalb. Some listed are various larger events throughout the city, but not only do the firefighters go out into the community, but we have a lot of people who come into the fire station for fire safety talks. You can see that through over 95 activities, we've reached over 6,300 people with our fire prevention, with our public education ventures. Now going into fire department logistics, there's a lot of moving gears to operate the fire department. And so different shifts and different firefighters work with administration to make sure that all the tasks and needs are taken care of the fire department. Like we stated before, we have 3 fire stations, with the main station being Station 1 being our headquarters. Buildings and grounds, daily maintenance is done by the firefighters. Also minor repairs. All the funding needed to keep our stations up and running properly and to be safe are through the fire department's non-personnel budget. Major repairs are completed by Public Works or through a third-party vendor. Some of the things that we have accomplished in 2017 as far as buildings and grounds is the apparatus floor at Station 1, which was built in 1972, still had the original paint. The apparatus floor a bay got cleaned and freshly painted walls and ceilings. Also, new LED light for safety was installed. Station 2 did not receive any significant repairs, and Station 3 received major repairs to their furnace. Firefighting gear and supplies. There's a shift that takes care of this, and what they're in charge of is maintaining and purchasing all of the equipment that we have on our fire engines and around the fire station. So all the saws, axes, hoses, everything of that nature our firefighting shift, gear shift takes care of. Also fire extinguishers, and then they take care of our PPE. So they're in charge of researching and developing, finding the best price for our turnout gear and for other personal protective equipment. Another shift takes care of our EMS supplies. Everything that you would find on an ambulance to give proper care to the citizens and visitors of DeKalb. So that includes all their inventories, stretchers, medical supplies, once again, personal protective equipment. Also, the fire department is in charge of taking care of all the AEDs in all the city buildings. So we take care of that as well. Respiratory protection, which is mandated by OSHA. We have a corps of firefighters that take care of everything that has to do with our respiratory protection. We have 5 different types that we utilize at any given time. We also have to maintain quarterly testing for the air quality within our SCBA's. Annual testing of our SCBA's, or self-contained breathing apparatus, which is mandated by OSHA. They take care of all of that. Also, the firefighters have to be fit tested, which means for each piece of respiratory protection that we wear, we have to be fit tested to make sure that we get the proper seals and that we're safe when we're working. Communications. Communications and radio equipment is extensively used while dealing with emergency incidents. We have a long list of different types of radios and base stations, personal pagers for recalling firefighters for large events. Also, we have 21 mobile databases. Those are the computers that are in the fire apparatus. We work closely with INT to make sure that those are working properly at any given time. Fleet maintenance. The heart and soul of the fire service and the DeKalb Fire Department is keeping our fire apparatus ready to go. We have 27 different types of fire apparatus that have specific purposes. We do have a corps of mechanics that take care of our fire apparatus. So the firefighters will do small maintenance jobs, tightening bolts and such, changing light bulbs. But we have a mechanics team that coordinates the maintenance of our vehicles and then makes moderate repairs, which is through one team coordinator and 8 mechanics. They're also responsible for making sure that all mandated annual testing is completed, like for our ground ladders and aerial ladders, and for our water pumps on our fire engines. They also take care of small power tools such as saws, high volume fans, and generators. Most large repairs and all of our preventive maintenance is outsourced through private shops within the area. And so that explains our maintenance program. We have a lot of capital needs on the fire department. One of the main questions that we're always faced is, how long is a fire truck good for? How long is a fire engine good for, or an ambulance? It's really hard to determine, and that's why it's important for the fire department to have a capital replacement plan. You could look at NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. They say that a ladder truck is good for 20 years, frontline service, and a fire engine is good for 15 years. But is that truly the end-all story? Fire trucks just don't fall apart as soon as they reach a useful life. What's also determined is, what you have to think about is how hard these vehicles are driven. They work in the most extreme conditions of whether heat or cold. They frequently experience rapid acceleration and deceleration, hard turns. They're turned on and off constantly, going in and out of the fire station, and quick stops. Also, the fire apparatus are always on high idle, is what we call it. They run at high engine speeds to run all the equipment that's on that vehicle. And then they're always at maximum load. Unlike other trucks where they're offloading, onloading, the fire truck and fire engines are always at maximum load. So you get a different wear and tear, which usually that's why fire apparatus wear out more quickly. The fire department currently has 7 vehicles nearing or at the end of their service life. Some of these that need immediate replacement are Car 4, which is a staff vehicle. That's a 2001. It has extensive rust. Last year, the driver's door had to be welded back on, and it experiences mechanical problems. Our engine 4 is a 2001, which is our reserve engine out at Station 3, and that does have body work needs, and it's an older engine. And then Medic 5, which is a 2006, that ambulance is used to be frontline, is now sitting in reserve status. Some vehicles that need to be replaced in the next 3 years, Medic 6, which is an old International, it's basically an ambulance on a truck chassis. Okay? That sister vehicle we used to have 2 of those, that sister vehicle was retired several years ago. That one is a 2005. An interesting vehicle that we have, Engine 3, which is frontline out at Station 3, the busiest station in DeKalb County. Okay. As you can see, that's a 2007 and already has 88,000 miles, so it has a lot of wear and tear being out at that station. As well, its sister engine, which is Engine 2, because they were purchased at the same time, okay, is also in the same boat as Engine 3, but obviously at a slightly slower station. Car 5, which is a staff vehicle for the fire prevention officer, is a 2001, is frequently in the mechanic shop. And then Car 6, another staff car. Now moving on to the budget review, we're going to review revenues generated by the fire department, the personnel budget, and the non-personnel budget. A little bit about the revenues generated by the fire department. Last year, we generated $1.9 million worth of revenue for the city. From that, because 75% of all that we do is ambulance calls, you could see that that we just brought in over $1 million in revenue through ambulance billing. In the orange, you'll see that our NIU contract last year was over $600,000. Because we are also contracted with the DeKalb Fire Protection District, you can see that rate is at just over $144,000. Now, there's also other fees associated that the fire department brings in through rooming housing, through city ordinance, rooming licenses, fire life safety licenses, and hotel motel. And then also we bring in revenue through cost recovery, whether it's on the tollway, through motor vehicle accidents, or false alarms. Our ambulance revenue. If you look on the lower left-hand corner, the lower right-hand corner, you will see the different types of billing we have available when it comes to treating patients. In the gray, you'll see that we have private insurance. Then you have Medicaid, which is in the orange, and then Medicare, which is in the blue. Okay. And then we have self-pay. Self-pay is those who do not have private insurance or have Medicare or Medicaid. Now, when you look in the lower left-hand corner, what you'll see is that private insurance accounts for over 50% of our revenue coming in, with Medicare being second and Medicaid coming in third, and then you see a small percentage of revenue is actually brought in by those who are self-pay. So when you look at the upper graph, what you see is that in 2017 we billed out over $2.4 million of services. However, we recovered just under $1 million. And if you compare that to 2016, what you see is that we actually billed out $400,000 more in ambulance billing, but compared 2016 to 2017, we only recovered an additional $20,000. Because of that, like we've said, private insurance is the bulk of what we receive in revenue. However, Medicare and Medicaid is capped off. And then, once again, with the self-pay, those people pay what they can. So that's how our ambulance revenues usually pan out. Our EMS trend, what we have seen over the last couple of years or over the last decade, is a steady increase for services. Why is this? Because of the lessening of state help, whether it comes from prescription drugs, home health care is on the decline, and also mental health care all through the state. So what we're finding is that we're receiving a lot of calls for the disabled and for the elderly who are staying home longer. They're trying to be independent because of that home health care is not there. So we're receiving a lot more calls for assistance just to help them out of bed, just to help them out of the bathtub. As well, we're also seeing a lot more in mental health calls. So, for example, in 2009, we had 217 calls for mental health. Compare that to in 2017, we had over 400 calls. That was a 94% increase just in psychological calls. Alternate funding, we're always looking for other ways to bring money into the fire department, whether it's through the AFG grant, the Assistance to Firefighter grant, or local grants, whether it's direct funds or monies, or whether supplies such as receiving CO alarms. But we're constantly writing grants, trying to bring in additional funding. Our personnel budget. What you can see here is a total for the fire department. In salaries, we had $5.3 million in salaries. We do not provide a product, we provide a service. So we had $5.3 million in salaries. Next, you could see $2.6 million in pension, $1.6 million in insurance and care, and then $103,000 in contractual pay. As well, we had over $400,000 in overtime coming through the fire department. So that's where we get our numbers for the personnel budget for the fire department. Non-personnel wise, you can see that the bulk of what we do is for fire equipment. $109,000 for administration. For our non-personnel budget, we have $106,000. Vehicle maintenance, once again keeping our fleet road ready, battle ready as we call it. We spend a lot, we spend a good portion of our budget on that. Buildings and grounds, and then EMS supplies, which take up the bulk of our non-personnel budget. What we're seeing with our non-personnel budget is a decrease, so to speak, through the years. What we've received are additional unfunded mandates added to our budget over the last couple of years. We've seen and an example of that is ambulance billing, which was not in our budget, is now in our budget. So that's where we've seen an increase in our budget spending. There's been basically no increase in our non-personnel budget, and then you couple that with the rising cost of materials and services that we utilize. As a direct result of that, what we have found throughout the years is that we have had to adjust to accept these to pay for these unfunded mandates is by decreasing or deferring some replacement of worn equipment. We've changed our model for public education and intervention training and some special teams training. On this slide here, it does demonstrates our non-personnel budget throughout the year. You can see in 1995, we had a $431,000 non-personnel budget, which accounted for 13% of our budget. As you can see throughout the years, that decreased. In 2017, we hit our low water mark. But you can see in 2018 that has increased because we did get an influx for equipment replacement for our special teams, and so that greatly helped us buy the much-needed equipment, and once again, we thank the council for that. I'd like to thank you for your time, our appreciation to the mayor and council, city staff, and the city manager, and citizens of DeKalb. Do you have any questions about our service review or our annual report?
Well, we'll see, Jeff. That was quite an extensive report. Thank you. Alderman Fagan.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate everything you do. Under the ambulance review revenue, billed out is about $2.5 million,
Correct.
and you collect a little less than $1 million. And that's, when you start looking at that going back even to 2016, I mean, you're talking about $500,000 each year that we're losing out on, aren't we?
That is correct. Once again, like we said, the bulk of where we receive our revenue is through private insurance. When it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, which is what our constituents, those that we serve, they're relying every year more and more on Medicare and Medicaid. They pay pennies on the dollar.
Right.
And there is nothing that we could do about that. We can bill as much as we want, and that's all that we can recover. So as that pie gets bigger, our revenues don't go up.
And that includes the people that don't have any insurance and don't have any means of paying either, right?
That's correct, the self-pay patients that we see.
Right.
There's only so much we could do about that. We could bill them, but whether they can pay
Yeah,
or
you're not
not is a
gonna-
different
right.
story.
Right.
Just like the medical community, we are
Right.
we are a provider.
Right, right,
And
right.
Medicare and Medicaid pretty much dictates what we're going to receive,
Right.
regardless of what our costs may be.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at. It's, the response, the ambulance response, and what you actually almost go out and medicate, and then the people deny transport.
I'm sorry, can you?
They deny transport to the hospital.
Some
Just-
people do.
It's a treat and leave.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Some
Yeah.
people, they just come for evaluation. Some people, a trend that we see is, and we'll just take a diabetic, for example, they don't get the proper medical care, they'll try to hold on as long as they can, we'll treat them, either they'll then deny transport or we'll take them to the hospital to get the proper care that they need, the medication that they need. They'll hold on for another week or two until they get to a point where they call for an ambulance, and you just see this constant cycle, and it's with people with high blood pressure, diabetics, seizures. We see that on a regular basis, this endless circle.
Thank you.
Alderman Norrico.
Jeff, I noticed that there were cuts for, attending some conferences and membership, professional associations. What's the impact of those cuts?
The impact of those cuts is we like to, it's the networking, it's the getting the resources. For example, one of our subscriptions is to the International Fire Chiefs Association. That community, being a part of them, they help us extensively with new and efficient ways to test for firefighters and for promotions. They allow you access to testing companies that provide discounts as far as if we went out on our own and tried to get that service provided. Also, for such things such as serious injuries and firefighter deaths, thank goodness, which we have not experienced here in DeKalb, but that is a resource that being part of the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, we can rely on them to come in and help the stricken fire department. So there is a lot of advantages with that. All of our training that we go through in conferences, we work we work diligently to try and bring back the benefits of going to these conferences back to the fire department so we can utilize what we've learned. But we have trimmed those back, yes.
Also, I wanted to give a thank you to the department. I noticed, and maybe I just overlooked it with your last report, but for your EMS teams, you have a sepsis alert protocol.
We do.
and which I very much appreciate. My husband nearly died of sepsis about 7 years ago, and so seeing that that's out there, I know how quickly it can become deadly, and so I'm very appreciative of that. Hopefully, we won't ever need that again, but for people who do in the community, I think it's something that, you don't recognize it and appreciate it until you need it. So, but thank you.
Well, thank you. The Kishwaukee Hospital and your fire department do work diligently and train diligently on recognizing sepsis, and what we're really finding is it does make a difference in patient care. Thank you so much.
Alderman Verbeek.
Do we know our break-even point with NIU services or a 3-year average for those services? Do we track that kind of information?
We do track that information when we go. What we do is we take we take what we call cost of going out the door. So we take our salaries of vehicles, and we take a look at what we run to NIU. And what we have recently found is that we are at a good point.
Great.
What you saw in the one graph, we brought in $166,000 through the NIU contract. Next year, we will be moving up to $830,000 for that service as part of the NIU contract. But we do track that, yes.
So that is we're trying to stay at a break-even point number is what I was getting at.
Yes, we are at a break-even point.
Great.
Yes, Alderman Verbeek.
Additionally, if we look at how our incidents are tracking, and the last time we justified a new fire station, will you come to us at the time when we need to start preparing for when we are justifying a new station or the relocation of a station, but the numbers are tracking to where we'll have that consideration pretty soon?
Yes, definitely so. We do constantly track that. We watch our response times. We watch how quickly we can get certain types of equipment, whether it's an engine and ambulance or whether it's a full complement of fire equipment. We track that carefully and see what our time distances are. So whether it's opening up another station or relocating stations, we are constantly trying to find out what is the optimal place, and it also is based on the growth of the city, where is the best place to have our fire station. So definitely, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Favor.
I have a couple of questions. One is, I think it's common practice when we send out an ambulance, there's a second vehicle that goes along with that, correct?
That is correct.
Have we, I guess, evaluated, instead of sending a fire truck or a large engine along with the ambulance, is it, well, number one, is it required that we send additional personnel? Could we get by with just sending the ambulance and the complement of staff that are in the ambulance as opposed to sending an additional truck along with that? And then second is, instead of sending an engine, which are quite expensive, and instead of that, having something like a Ford Explorer, and put two people in a Ford Explorer to follow the ambulance versus, an engine going along with the ambulance.
Yes. For your first question, national standards want, at least you saw in a previous slide that we have BLS calls and ALS calls. BLS calls can be handled with 2 paramedics on an ambulance. However, when you start getting into ALS calls, like I said, could be seizures or asthma attacks to severe heart attacks or even sudden death. National standards want 4 paramedics or 4 first responders out there within 4 to 6 minutes to start rendering that care. So what type of vehicle they go in? Obviously, we got to send an ambulance. Now, with that secondary vehicle can be determined. We have looked at looking at different service levels of, do we necessarily need to send a fire engine? If we had some type of fast response vehicle, maybe we get a Suburban and an ambulance out to those people. We're getting those paramedics out there to render the care, but maybe we're not beating up our fire trucks. Now, until we come up with that model and determine what's best for the citizens of DeKalb, what's best for our, what does our budget afford, that's where we're trying to look at this. But yes, we are constantly looking at and have considered it.
Okay. And then the other one, I spoke to the chief a little bit about this right after the IML conference, but I was at the IML conference this year. Rockford has a program now. They have 3 hospitals, so maybe it's easier to implement. But they have I don't know if DeKalb has frequent users of the ambulance service, but up in Rockford they have chronic or consistent users that get transported to the hospital, and they take up time at the emergency room. So the hospitals that they're working with, they actually pay the fire department to staff a person to actually work with individuals that are constant users of the ambulance service to try and find alternatives to the ambulance care so they can reduce not only the time that these people spend in the emergency room tying up those resources, but also with tying up the fire department resources as well. I don't know if we have enough. I don't know the data. Obviously, I'm sure you're looking at the data. You've got the calls in different areas, but do you track by potentially individual users or repeat users of the ambulance system? Do we have a high number?
We do. We do have frequent users. We do track them. Actually, I was working on one this morning. Right now, what our process is that we work with social services in the area. We still respond to their 911 calls, even if it is for a simple help. I need help out of the bathtub, or I need help with something else. We do track these people, and we respond. What we do then is we refer them to social services that we have in the area. We have talked about and have looked at and considered another model. We have talked to Kishwaukee Hospital about maybe trying to come up with some program, and it's called community medicine, where you have a Suburban or some type of vehicle, and maybe you have a DeKalb paramedic and a nurse from the hospital, and you go to these people who need the frequent care to try and give them the primary health care that they need, that they don't seek out going to the doctor because of lack of funding. It's just coming up with who's going to pay for the personnel, who's going to pay for the vehicle, the medical supplies, but it is a very real concept. It is very successful up in Rockford and other areas within Illinois, and I think it is something that this community should consider to help try and help out those that are in our community.
Is that being considered now? I mean, within the framework of our department?
It has been discussed, and it's being looked into. Would I say there's any concrete plans? No, but it is something where there have been discussions over the last year or two.
Because we've heard so many times in talking to you and Eric and others that, a high preponderance of calls are coming from not only the same area, but they're going from a residence or a unit, and they're going to the emergency room at Kishwaukee Hospital for something that I guess we would call not life-threatening.
That is true.
Isn't that a fact?
Absolutely. Primary health care.
Yeah.
Used to be a day where you went to the doctor, you went to the dentist on a regular basis. People just don't have those means anymore. So they hold on as long as they can, and then they call for an ambulance because they have a toothache or because they ran out of blood pressure medication. If we had some kind of community medicine, this is something that we could head off and therefore lowering the response needs by our fire department. So,
Alderman Fanouken.
Jeff, how many of the calls of the 5,573 calls in the course of a year are typically outside the city but within the fire protection district? Any idea? I mean, because the numbers you provide really don't present that. And the reason I ask is you talked about the revenue, and only 7.2% of the revenue comes from that fire protection district contract, and I'm wondering if we're getting our fair share there also.
Okay, last year, if I'm reading this correctly, we just ran over 200 calls to the Fire Protection District.
Okay, and obviously that doesn't include the MABUS calls where you're assisting other departments,
Yes.
just within the district.
Yeah, we ran 100 and, I believe it's 114 calls
All right.
to our mutual aid partners. We kind of consider that as in order to get mutual aid.
Oh, yeah, that I understand
We
completely,
gotta
but I
go.
was more concerned about the number of calls going to the Fire Protection District. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions of Deputy Fire Chief McMaster? You know, I look at the cuts that this council made to your budget this year. And we made some of the easy ones. The easy ones being the copiers or the training or, it's difficult to say no to someone who calls you guys and says, hey, I'm having an attack or my kid got hurt or whatever. And, as a city council and as a city, we're not unique in the sense that, you look at our total personnel budget and it's $10 million, $4 million, $5 million is salaries, and $3.5 million is for pensions. The pension obligation in this community and this state is just unbelievable. I'm not saying it's right, it's wrong, or whatever, but I am saying that it's just a continual albatross around our collective necks. And we've got to get a handle on it somehow. I'm not asking you to give me an answer, Jeff, that's for sure. So, any other questions or comments? That's my 2 cents worth, Judge, and I'm sticking to it, Okay, thank you. Anybody from the audience care to address this particular item on the agenda? If not, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mail in your city account.
Okay, our next service level review is from our Human Resources Department. And once again, our HR Director, Chris Randall, will speak to this item.
That's what I was wondering about. Okay. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, I'm very excited and honored to be here to share with you a little bit of the great work that we do in HR. And there's a lot of information that I want to share, but in the interest of time, I'm not. Otherwise, we are going to be here all night. So you do have a lot of information provided in your memo. They are very detailed information. I will be happy to answer any questions now or later. But I have a very high-level overview of the services that we provide for you tonight. So the HR department is responsible for the administration of all aspects of personnel services and to be a strategic partner to all 7 departments, implementing policies and accomplishing goals that are established by council. When we think about HR, most will always think about the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of work that's done underneath the surface. And those particular 6 areas of responsibility is what I wanted to touch on tonight. So the first one is administration and strategy. The strategic and transformational HR role requires a holistic and long-term approach to activities that will assist the city in moving forward in their outcomes in the future. HR works directly with all departments in identifying ways that we can support them in achieving their goal through the optimized use of the city's greatest assets, which is our employees. Some of the tasks under this umbrella is to forecast any human capital needs, lead talent management initiatives through a performance management, help employees achieve their full potential through professional development, monitor the legislative environment for any impact on proposed laws and regulations, And oftentimes, we also help shape some of the legal environment by communicating with legislators and agencies through the support of professional organizations such as the IPAWRA, the Illinois Public Employer Labor Associations. We also implemented and administer all human resources information systems and several in-house databases. The technology really helps us enhance our efficiency, and so we can actually spend our time in more meaningful projects. A well-designed and competitive compensation program is a key part of the foundation for delivering public services, because it is through the city's ability to attract and retain capable talent that the quality of services are provided to the community. HR manages programs to all city employees, retirees, and we also provide health insurance administration to the DeKalb Public Library. Some of the tasks also includes a job evaluation to determine the value of the job and their appropriate pay range placement, job analysis, which targets job descriptions and specifications of each role. And we also ensure internal equity that rewards equal pay for equal work and do not discriminate against protected classes. Since 2016, the city has been carefully evaluating benefits programs and making adjustments in order to continue to provide benefits to employees, but at a cost that is sustainable by the city. Some of the latest initiatives include the high deductible plan with a health savings account, an HMO plan, and an opt-out incentive that so far in 2018 saved the city approximately $245,000 in insurance premiums. Workers' compensation and unemployment insurance, they are both programs mandated by law. Work comp protects employees in case of a work-related injury and provides payments for the treatment, disability payment, and settlements. Over the past 3 years, HR has managed about 155 reported occurrences. Employment insurance is designed to partially compensate eligible individuals for loss of wages. In 2017, also, the responsibility of the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, IMRF, was shifted from the Finance Department to HR, which now being myself as the city's IMRF authorized agent. Most recently, also shifted from the finance to HR, was the coordination of the deferred compensation plans of the city. Employee relations refers to any dealings between the city and employees, and HR serves as the main contact between parties with responsibilities such as developing and enforcing workplace policies, to be a resource for employees and supervisors to ensure that positive city-employee relationship. We assist supervisors addressing difficult employee situations. We administer performance improvement plans, grievance and dispute resolutions. We also deal with any matters of collective bargaining, negotiation, and contract interpretation for the city's 3 unions, FSME, FOP, and IFF, which combine, it covers 154 employees, which is almost 80% of our workforce. So every organization faces internal and external risks, and HR is responsible to develop and implement programs to prevent and reduce occurrences of workplace risks and other adverse impacts. And we are also the liaison for the safety team, which is in charge of promoting a safe and healthy work environment. Some of the tasks also includes investigate and resolve employee complaints, file with labor and federal agencies, including employment practice, collective bargaining agreements, and working conditions. Some of the other legal compliance is educating employees on the legality of policies, establishing metrics, and doing mandatory reporting. In the past 18 months, HR implemented the city's first personnel manual and benefits handbook. It was overhauling the existing HR procedures with the purpose to lead and manage employee in an effective manner. And we also conducted 13 trainings in-house for the personnel manual. Next, we have training and talent management, which there are activities that are involving building and maintaining the workforce that meets the needs of the city. We provide comprehensive orientation and onboarding to all new hires. And we also continue to improve the city's performance management program by providing supervisors and employees with guidance to how to align employee expectations with the city's core values and the strategic plan. Professional development, there are activities that play a vital role in enhancing the knowledge and skills of the workforce and is a big factor in employee retention. Well-trained employees develop a sense of fulfillment and loyalty to the city. For the past 18 months, HR has been very busy, and we facilitated 36 in-house training sessions, including Americans with the Disability Acts for supervisors, cultural competency and inclusion, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, ethics, performance evaluation, and human resources information systems. Workplace planning and employment. Two of the most critical areas of HR is recruiting and staffing. This would ensure organizational stability, emphasize the city's brand and reputation, supports accountability, and ensures that employees successfully perform their jobs. HR administers all aspects of recruitment for full-time, part-time, seasonal, interns, graduate, undergraduate, and volunteers. I do have some statistics for you, but most notably, in 2017, almost 1,000 applications were screened by HR, 128 candidates were interviewed, and 35 were onboarded. And just to put in perspective, since January this year up to now, we have worked or are in the process of working already with 25 vacancies. HR also acts as the liaison and serves as the secretary for the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners, which is responsible to recruit all candidates, all sworn candidates for police and fire. And I recognize there was some discussion last meeting regarding police recruitment brought by Alderman Finucane. And my next bullet points here will really provide you some good background on that. For the police and fire, we always need to be ready to hire, and that's why we establish eligibility lists. That means candidates are eligible to start on the contingent job offer, which is the background and the psychological and the medical. So in 2016, and knowing that the hire of public safety is one of the most important things for a municipality, one of the things that I did when I first started was to meet with the BFPC, and we undertook a comprehensive streamlining of the recruitment process for the sworn personnel. That streamlining, the outcome was a reduced 3 months of the recruitment process and saving the city about $3,000 in costs, and also increase our diversity outreach. But despite all of those efforts to increase the efficiencies that are under our control, the city continues to face hard challenges recruiting for police officer positions. And here's one example, just to put in perspective. The recruitment process to establish an eligibility list for police officer is started in November 2016, and the list was intended to last for 2 years, but it was exhausted in less than 12 months. Only 70 applications were received, 20 candidates were placed on the eligibility list, and we went through all 20 candidates to hire 2 in 2017. Only 2 of the 20 candidates were found to be a good fit for the city. So while the outcome is only 2, there's a tremendous amount of work that is from both HR and the police staff that is put into processing all of those 20 candidates from the list. That was just one of the recruitments. In 2017, we conducted 5 more, And keep in mind, those lists supposed to last 2 years, and now we're going through 6 recruitments since 2017. Also, last year, we conducted a promotional process for fire captain, battalion chief, sergeant, police sergeant, and for firefighters. Retention, it is just as important to hire as it is to retain employees. And HR continues to work with departments in hiring supervisors in engaging initiatives to not only welcome new employees and give the tools necessary for them to fulfill their jobs, but also to keep long-tenured employees engaged. Job analysis and job descriptions, we already talked about that a little bit. And finally, on that list, HR is also the records manager, the records keeper for all the personnel and workers' compensation and medical files. Some of the recent accomplishments that we had for the past 18 months is the launching of the 3 modules of the Human Resources Information System, which is the applicant tracking system, performance management, and onboarding. The applicant tracking system is also not only a win for us, but it's for the candidates as well, because now they're able to create an online profile and receive timely email notifications when the positions are posted. We also identified some more targeted recruitments with more cost-effective strategies targeting specific sites and social medias to quickly notify candidates about vacancies. And we continue to enhance our partnership with NIU in projects and organizations to enhance our talent pipeline and KISH to diversify the applicant pool of candidates. NIU and the City of DeKalb relationship continues to be enhanced by the granting of the Illinois Board of Higher Education grant last year. And for the position evaluation, since our job descriptions haven't been updated for quite some time, HR established a process of working with hiring supervisors prior to posting the positions to ensure that those job descriptions are revised and capture the essential functions and the requirements and working conditions of the role. Also significant to 2017, including partnering with Public Works on restructuring, cost containment, and evaluation of positions open through attrition. And we also play a vital role in the transition from crime-free from police department to community development, ensuring that the position, each position was reviewed with both incoming and outgoing departments to capture and account the responsibilities and to revise the job descriptions and to communicate with staff. The performance management process, you probably heard me saying this before and you continue to do, it is a process that will cross several years. So the very first phase was initiated in 2016 with a project team composed of several members of the workforce that participated in the discussions and helped us provide feedback regarding the new process. On that year, informational guidelines were created, supervisory staff received training about the new process that started with evaluations in 2017. And in conjunction, they were also trained on the new software. The phase 2 started late last year and the beginning of this year with employee self-evaluations, and myself personally conducted 13 training sessions to staff in the new performance evaluation process and the software. The phase 3 and final phase, we can always have more phases, but the phase 3 for now will be to develop the pay-for-performance methodology for the non-bargaining unit employees. We also implemented some benefits administration softwares named Benefit Solver, which is a subscription that comes with our membership with the IPBC, so it does not cost the city anything. It allows HR to manage and monitor insurance enrollment and creates reports and analytics. And it also will benefit employees so they can access the information on benefits on the portal. Phase 1 was the implementation is done. Phase 2 will be to initiate an online open enrollment. So hopefully we can get the process a little bit more effective. And one good thing about this software too is that it will seamlessly integrate with the BSNA software that we are soon to be implementing. We also have some wellness initiatives. We now have a city well-being team, and the team represented again by several employees across departments with a mission to promote and support programs that encourage emotional, physical, financial, social, and career well-being. Through this initiative, we had on-site health evaluations, lunch and learns, and employee recognitions. We have the cultural competency and inclusion training that was provided to non-sworn employees, and this year, police already started to provide cultural competency for their staff. We continue doing mandatory annual reporting and collaborating with finance on the total compensation reports, audit information, OPEB, OSHA, and Affordable Care Act. Labor relations and employee engagement. This is one of the primary duties and the most time-consuming that we have in HR. For the past several months, we strengthened and encouraged increased dialogue with city workforce by establishing open channels of communications that didn't exist before. Some of the initiatives included active and proactive dissemination of information via different channels, memos, emails, intranet, you name it. We renew quarterly labor management meetings with all three unions that has provided a very good relationship and opportunity for us to do some minor resolutions and just to have a good, healthy discussion. We are engaging employees to participate in the conception of the new performance evaluation process so they can get a buy-in to the system. And we successfully negotiated the contract with the three unions. So my last two slides, this one will talk about the challenges and opportunities, and I included that graph in there because it's very telling. As previously mentioned, two of the most critical roles of HR is recruiting and staffing. It is important to find the right person for each position and doing so in a cost-effective and timely manner. There is a significant data that supports that organizations across the country, they continue to face challenges in recruiting, retaining, and rewarding top talent. Changes in demographics paint a compelling challenge and opportunity for government organizations all around the country. There are 70 million baby boomers and only 40 million Gen X's and millennials behind them. And organizations are starting to feel the impact of the workforce shortages and will be competing for the same pool of candidates. Those are current projections of the City of DeKalb workforce. By 2022, there are going to be 61 employees eligible for retirement. And by 2025, 82. That is half of our workforce. Not included on those numbers, there are the vacancies that are created by regular employee attrition and turnover that cannot be anticipated. So when somebody asks what it keeps me awake at night, this is it. So which is a good thing for people looking for jobs, because now the unemployment is at its lowest, but it's going to be really hard, not only for everybody's on the same conundrum, and we are going to be competing for this top talent. So effective and timely recruitment, along with the city's ability to attract and retain talent, will become the most important area that we all need to focus on the next 5 years. With challenges, all comes opportunities, and the city has this great opportunity to start being proactive and develop succession plan that will identify needs of intellectual and skills of employees that will take on their leadership role throughout our departments. This initiative will not only provide employees with the tools and resources they need to prepare to take on future work, but it will also ensure the city has adequate human capital to deliver quality and timely services to the community. One quote that I always like to use is, "The time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining." When we receive that retirement notice, it's already too late to start succession planning. And just to summarize, HR is committed to provide support and superior services to all city departments and current and prospective candidates, so they can attain their highest potential in achieving the goals identified by City Council and leave a positive legacy to the residents of DeKalb. And to do that, we count with a talented and dedicated staff that combined has over 62 years of HR experience, 2 bachelor's degree with human resources concentration, and holds certifications as human resources professional by the National HR Institute, certified labor relations professional by the National Public Labor Relations Association, and certified HR professional by SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management. I want to thank you. I know I probably went a little bit over my 10 minutes, but trust me, this is a great opportunity to be here, to be able to share some of the things that we do, and I don't want to scare anybody. We do have the capacity to take on those challenges, but we all need to work together and be proactive. So I will be happy to answer any questions you may have about the service review or the budget.
We'll find out how successful we are at recruitment, because over half of the projected retirements are going to happen this year. 34 of 61.
Those are projected as, you know.
Well, I understand. I
They're
understand.
not people that say, I'm retiring, but if they don't retire this year, then you're going to have 40 next year
Yeah, right.
and continue.
Yeah, I understand. So, we're just going to have to wait and see how difficult it is to recruit those folks, so. Okay, that's my comment, and Alderman Orico.
Thank you, Chris. It was very comprehensive. I have a question. You mentioned that the library, you provide benefits administration services
Yes.
for the library. Do we charge the library for that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
They pay, and if you look at when you look at the insurance budget, you will see that there is a health insurance fund and revenues for library contributions.
Okay.
That's,
Okay, I'm sorry,
they
I
pay
missed that.
100% for all their costs, but we still do the work.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
just to clarify, Alderman Rico, we don't charge a fee to administer the benefits of the library staff. We just don't pay any of the premiums. The library pays 100% of all insurance costs,
Well,
but
yeah,
we, the city, administer, enroll them, and handle the back scene stuff. But the library gets that service at no cost.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
I thought that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
So, no, we don't, unlike our relationship with Fire and NIU, where NIU does pay for the services of fire response and so on, and through an IGA, we do not have an IGA with the library. All the work that HR to support those benefits is at no cost to the library.
and I know that, there's time, for the benefits meetings, and there's time, to answer employee questions, and
We
there
do
are
all-
always problems with benefits administration, so you have to deal with your carriers and so forth. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. The
And
open enrollment
we-
meetings,
and I-
bringing the
and I-
carriers.
And I also understand that technically the library is part of the city, but, okay.
Well, in addition too, because the library is part of our IMRF, Finance Department and HR also provide administration for the IMRF benefits for the public library.
You think there's any opportunities for discussion, or?
I beg your pardon?
You think there's any opportunities for discussion with the library? I mean, not necessarily going to them and presenting a bill for next year, but saying, this is the reality, and and let's take a look at this moving forward. And, I mean, I don't want to drop a bomb on the library. They've had, some healthy issues to deal with, but,
There are probably better times to have done that,
well, yeah, but
Announced.
at least, planting a seed or planting a big seed.
So we
Another time,
have,
another, this right place, but another time, yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can think about it,
Absolutely.
but let them know we're thinking.
so Alderman Noriko, we have let them know we're thinking about it.
Okay.
Molly has had discussions with library director. Prior to Molly, our previous finance director has
Oh,
also
okay.
mentioned some sort of cost sharing and,
Well, and I'm sure, they obviously don't want to do it. I mean, they've had this wonderful benefit. But if they had to go out and hire, a benefits administration firm or part-time HR director or part-time benefits assistant or something, I mean,
correct.
I probably won't be able to go into the library tomorrow.
Alderman Verbeek.
Yes, please do establish a cost of services to them. I will not support pro bono work for the public library. So, great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think we can get to that point of what is that break-even point.
Alderman Fagan.
I've got two items here on the budget. For regular and part-time wages back in 2016, we were at $115,000. And now, 2 years later, we're at around $253,000. I know it went up to $243,000 in 2017. It was quite a bit of a jump. I'm just wondering where that's coming in from, because our part-time more than doubled.
Is that because of the
And
position that
that's-
was in CMO?
So here's what we did. A part-time, HR had a part-time position already that employee transitioned to finance, and Michelle Brenning, our recruiter, was brought on board to fill that. But in addition to that, we looked at some restructuring within the city manager's office, and a position that used to be under the city manager's office part-time salary budget line item was transitioned into the HR budget to provide the administrative, secretarial
All right.
support.
All
So
right.
we did not add a position citywide. We transferred the cost from the city manager's office budget to the HR, therefore increasing the HR budget but decreasing the city manager's budget.
All right, and so I'm going to have to go back to the city manager's budget and figure that out, going back to 2016 to current.
Yep. there
So
should-
that's how you see that kind of step, move from one department to the other, but keep the budget the same. All
Right,
right,
and that's included, and just for everyone's knowledge, I'm sorry, the staffing report that is part of your budget, it shows those changes from department, city manager went down one part-time. In that particular fiscal year, you will see the part-time position go up in HR. So that's the purpose of this comprehensive staffing report, part of your budget, so you can see where the movement happened and what additional positions were added or removed from the budget.
second item that I've got here is education tuition reimbursement.
Yes.
So in 2016, we were at a little over 2,000, budgeted 30,000 for 2017, and now we're up to 46,100. Where's this, what's the tuition? Is this through a contract that we have through employees that we pay for their education, or what is
Okay.
that?
So wait,
the
Chris,
first-
before you add that, I just want to mention a budget change again, which Chris was not here for. The department, each fire, police, all of the operating departments used to budget tuition reimbursement within their department accounts. We made the change where we wanted it to reside in one bucket, managed and approved and provide oversight by human resources and the director with the approval of the city manager. So each department, we took out the money for tuition reimbursement, we put it in human resources, and some of that tuition reimbursement is by contract for fire and police and for public works. We have a contractual obligation to pay out tuition reimbursement as dictated in their collective bargaining agreements.
Right.
So.
I understand that.
Yeah, you saw the spike because we pulled it from the departments and dumped it into one bucket, which is the HR tuition reimbursement line item.
All right, and when I'm looking at that, how am I supposed to know that when I go over and I ask for these individual line items? And it just has one item there for reimbursement. Doesn't break it down for police, doesn't break it down for the other departments. Where, I understand what you're doing, okay? I don't know why they did it why you wanted to have it done that way, because we don't know what department we're paying what tuition reimbursement for, whether it's public works, fire, police, or city staff.
And that is exactly correct, and that is the downfall of our current software system where it doesn't provide that detailed reporting. Alderman Jacobson in the past has asked for that breakdown. So what we've had to do, and I believe we shared it with all of council when this was 2 years ago, a year ago, I don't recall, finance and HR have to manually, they keep track of everything that's been approved, and that can be provided to you at any time, but it's not within the software system, so it doesn't show up in those reports, but it's a separate report that Molly could provide to the council on a regular basis if you choose.
I think that's extra work. You
It
know what I'm
is.
saying? But if it was still in the fire departments, the city the city police department, where it's broken down, then we could see it. But just being brought into this, it's lack transparency. That's my thought.
Alderman Orico?
I was just going to say, from a human resources perspective, you know, I agree with what was done in terms of, you know, the control, the oversight, the approval, budget development. It's an employee benefit. It should be managed by human resources.
That's not my point. My point was so we know what department that reimbursement's going out to. I have no problem with that. The problem is that our software system
Well,
can't break it down.
yeah.
And, okay, I get that, but my point was coming down from each department and where it's coming from and which department is using it.
Well, and, you know, it sounds like if, you know, that is something you're looking for until, you know, now will the new software system be able to provide that detail?
So we're going to kick off budget training in the new software system next month and put together the 19 budget in the new software. It does allow for line items underneath the account number. So information such as that, we can put into the system and track.
But you gotta understand, and Kate, I agree with you. HR should handle it. It should come out of that pot there. All right, but when I'm looking at this and the line items, it jumps out at me. And that's why I have to ask a question rather than being told.
Yeah,
You know.
that's a very good point, and that's why we have hundreds of spreadsheets. We do have that data, it's just not here on the line item.
Okay.
Yeah, I know how much we are paying for each department, for each person, for each year, of all the years that they have, just not here.
Does that answer your
I'm good.
question, Pat?
I'm good,
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Does anybody in the audience have any comments regarding the Human Resources Department service level review? If not, let's move along to the last item on our agenda tonight, and that's the line item review on the items for additional discussion. And here is our Finance Director, Molly Talkington.
Well, good evening. So, as requested in previous budget workshop meetings, council had asked for follow-up on vehicle allowance,
Right.
travel and training, and the dues and subscriptions. So that's what we've done here tonight. So, vehicle allowance is where we'll start. There you go. So, We went back as staff and finance and worked with HR to find how far back did vehicle allowances go at the city, to kind of get that history for council. And where we could find funding to start was 2003. But anecdotally, I know there's been a few people that have worked here longer said that vehicle allowances have happened prior to 2003. So the data you see kind of begins from that point forward. And the number of positions that had vehicle allowances has fluctuated from 2003 to current. So we've gone from as low as 4 staff to 8 staff members. And the cost in the lowest cost, as you can see on the chart, is $10,000 for the annual payout, so that's an actual amount, to the highest of $26,000, and that was in 2017. The current FY18 budget is at $23,000. It includes 7, the city manager, assistant city manager, department heads, and that excludes the 2 chiefs because they do have a city-issued vehicle. We did 2 comparable. It just so happened that one of these, someone else was asking, so we got the benefit of someone else doing the comparable information. We had done one on our own with the ILCMA, the Illinois City Managers Association, and publicsalaries.com. So for ILCMA, there were 10 out of the 12 communities surveyed that included vehicle allowance. And on the public salary survey, 16 out of the 19 had the vehicle allowance. The allowances ranged from $3,000 to $8,640 per year. And we're closer to the $4,000 range currently. Dues and subscriptions. So this is for memberships in professional organizations, subscriptions to publications, tools to research information, services basically to help inform staff, keep us up to date on current issues, and to help provide services to the public, because some of them are also offered for the public to look. It's an ability in a lot of these cases for us to leverage essentially like economies of scale by joining those organizations. A good example of that is Metro West and the Illinois Municipal League, where we can kind of partner with other groups to increase our lobbying efforts. So we use some of these to kind of get the more groups together to help support a position in that case, or to lower costs. So if you offer training to a larger amount of people, usually the cost per student or per staff member that goes would be lower. The general fund budget total for 2008 was just around $38,000, and then it's increased about $20,589 over the course of 10 years. In FY13, the subscriptions were reduced by $35,000, but then rose steadily. Part of that was when we were looking at the recession. So dues and subscriptions is usually one of the first places that reductions occur, and so it's been building back since then. So then we broke it down kind of by each department to show where they were in 2008 and where they are now. The one you'll see that has the largest percentage increase is in legislative, and it's really attributed to joining the Metro West group. That is budgeted at $15,450 in the current year. And the total for legislative is just under $21,000. The police department includes $11,527. This is an increase of $9,000 since 2008, and it's really attributed to, in that department, a more reliance on technology. So going to leads online and different subscription services that department uses. The city manager's office was next with the budget of $7,500, and the increase here was about $5,000 over those years. And this was more for organizations that are citywide in nature, like the National Public Employers Relation Association. It's also for the the International City Council Managers Association. And it includes digital access to things like the Daily Chronicle. And then The next one was the largest increase was the fire department, and this represents an increase of just under $2,000, but it was 37% over the 10 years. Community development's budget is difficult. Go to the next page, sorry. It's difficult kind of to trace over the 10 years, as discussed, as you heard under fire. Some of the position was in that department, then it came over to community development. Community development was a department, then it was a division, then it was folded into Public Works Department, so it's had kind of a myriad of a history here during the 10 years. But in comparing what we could find for community development singled out from 2008 to now, there was about a $2,300 increase in that department. Oops, I went too far. Sorry. Training and education. So you can see this has its peaks and valleys as well. Again, when their session hits, training and education and the professional development is one of the first places we look to for reductions. But it also provides a critical service, as you heard again in the fire department, to keeping people up to date and staff of where we are in the current kind of training environment, where we are with standards. The increase from over the 10 years was $169,000 in FY 2008 to about $17,000 in our current year. So that's a $47,000 increase. But the major change was for the police department. Police went up almost $44,000. As you know, again, HR talked, and you've heard police come twice. There's peaks and valleys in the hiring cycle for police. So some of their training comes when you're on a hiring cycle. We increase training because you need to onboard new officers, you need to put them through, training and all of that. So you kind of have peaks and valleys in how their budget is. So in the last 3 years, we're on a hiring cycle for that department. So you've had increases going up in this budget to account for the hiring of police officers. But you also have other things in here, and Chief Lowry really wanted me to point out that some of this is preventative in nature, and that we go to training so we're not seeing exposure to things that we could have prevented ahead of time. So a recent announcement was the City of Chicago just had a $16 million payout in an officer-involved shooting because it took the life of an innocent person regarding a wrongful death civil suit. But for the last 6 years, our police department has used every available training and best practice resource that is relevant and applicable to their mission to ensure that their officers are adequately trained and respond accordingly for the safety, for the mission, and with those risk management items in mind. And so the examples that he had to say, being part of that Illinois Chief of Police in a law enforcement accreditation program helps put some of those preventative measures in place so we don't see a lot of these things happen because we weren't properly trained ahead of time. Next, you can see in the departments, the city manager's office was an increase. This was added conferences and training for the city manager, but also for additional staff. So you added the assistant city manager with training, management analysts, and the interns in that division or department. Legislative department went up, and that was really so everyone can go to the Illinois Municipal League training. And notably, though, is the fire department is still down from where they were. Because, as you heard tonight, there's very little window for the kind of fire department to cut in their budget. So Chief Hicks does a very good job of trying to go through and assess everywhere he can to make the reductions count. So they've reduced training. While he says this, he doesn't feel that this affects the mission of the fire department right now, because the big change they made, and this is really why the training costs can stay down, is the city used to hire firefighters without paramedic experience, and we'd bring them on and we'd pay for training to have them be certified, state certified as paramedic. Now, to even be a part to join our city, you must be state certified as a firefighter and a paramedic. So we've changed our hiring requirement so that the costs of those training are on the person prior to them joining our organization. and that's helped reduce their costs. Any questions?
Alderman Jacobson.
Again, and going back through those slides, I think that there's a pretty obvious break from where we were in 2012 to 2018 at least. I know when I first came in, the goal was to start cutting off some of those conferences and making do with what we had in internal trainings. And I know that there was some pushback from staff then in saying, no, we need some of these trainings and these conferences for many of the same reasons you presented tonight. And we allowed that to a point, and we were looking to scale back on them rather than fully eliminate them. Again, and looking at all those costs from 2012, nearly every line item doubled. And that was never really presented to council on an annual basis, at least as I sat here. Obviously, it was part of the larger budget that we weren't going through with a fine-tooth comb under the last administration. And each and every year, it went up significantly. Again, those are policy decisions. Should we be sending interns to conferences? Is that something we have the ability to do right now with our budget constraints? Should we be spending $15,000 a year to be part of Metro West COG? Do we get enough benefit for it to make that make sense for us? Those were all things that were never brought to a council discussion and to the council level. And it worries me to see, again, when you look at some of those total costs in the departments where employees, the average employee is receiving a $2,000 benefit a year. Again, these are employees that are all six-figure employees in most of these departments. If they would like to go get more training, I think we should encourage that. I think we should strongly encourage that. But why does it have to be at the taxpayer? And I think that some of the question is coming to us as on the legislative budget. Should we be looking at IML, obviously the only conference we go to, and trying to figure out a more cost-effective or rational way to do that? I think that's a fair question at this point. But again, when you're looking at $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 in total expenses between these things, I think we have to have a very stark conversation again about what matters right now and what gaps we need to fill when we have budget shortfalls. I appreciate the staff wants to go to conferences. I appreciate their desire to go to conferences. I have very good time at an IML every year. At some point, those are luxuries. There can be an argument made that some of them, in limited cases, are certainly important in preliminarily offsetting some of that risk. The reality is when we have 3 and 4 and 5 people at some of these conferences, that risk would have been mitigated by one and the other for pork, as far as I'm concerned. So again, I to see the 18 budget increasing further, that's a problem for me. And I would like to see us very strongly look at some of those things and start scaling back to the pre-2013-12 levels that were the levels we were told then were more than enough to cover those liabilities that have been doubled in that time since.
I'm not about to suggest, Dave, that we don't need to continue to do some of the training at the levels that we are presently spending, okay? However, your point is well taken as it relates to this council, the policy-making decisions being borne on us. We need to know where that money is being spent. And I think what may have happened, and again, some of us have not been here as long as you and others have been, but there is this provision in our spending policy that would allow our city manager to have pretty much a carte blanche decision-making process of anything under, is it $20,000? And some of the points that you just brought falls within that range. So I think, again, knowing that the catalyst for a part of this discussion, Molly, shortly after you arrived, was our decision to move forward with a city manager search. And we got into some of the benefit options of our city manager and others, department heads, that parlayed into car allowances at all. So, Dave, I think what we can do here is to take some of your points and make sure that we, moving forward, wrap those into looking at what responsibilities and authorities, if you will, that certain folks have. I guess primarily talking about our city manager. Does that make sense? Okay. Alderman Norigo.
I am aware of the need to cut expenses, but I'm somewhat surprised at IT has, their budget seems relatively modest at $2,000, given the concerns about cybersecurity and how up to date, we are, with our, in terms of our system needs and so forth. It's just a comment, and, whether Mark has been able to tap into some networks or, other sources of information to, stay up to date at a level that he and city management are comfortable with. Whether those kinds of resources are perhaps available to other departments. I mean, IT could be a model for that. I don't know, or is Mark going to come, at budget time and say, I'm really behind the 8 ball and I need to get up to date?
So the IT budget was one of the reductions, specifically in training, that was taken during this budget. It was on the one-time in nature, so I feel that Director Thorson probably felt for 1 year he could absorb it and not do it, but I would imagine that next year that there would be some discussion about, is that an adequate training level going forward for that department?
And just to add to that, we're fortunate that we were able to cut the training for IT because Director Thorson is actually a board member of the National GMAS, which the training is at no cost to some board members. So he was able to participate in some training, but get the registration fee waived. For instance, I've now resigned, but as the president for the Illinois chapter of IPELRA, I am afforded the opportunity to represent the state at no cost at the national conference and so on. So we were able to reduce IT, and yes, it was more for a one-time because Mark was in a position to get some registration fees waived due to his board volunteerism on the national and state boards.
Okay.
Another arena in which we must continue to be very, very vigilant is the opportunity for grant funding. If we don't, we're losing out. I've talked to other mayors and to hear about some of the grant programs in which we may or may not have been eligible is very important. And I know you've covered this in staff, and, I look at Jeff over here, I commend you guys to find out about those radios. We made that grant, and you talked about the grants in your presentation tonight. I know Chief Lowry has been very, very vigilant in trying to find law enforcement grants out there, but we should be looking at those kind of things across the board, in my opinion. Any other, yeah, Alderman Fagan.
Just like to talk about the automobile reimbursement.
The allowances?
Allowances.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you for correcting me. Now, there's no part in here, how far do they have to travel before they get reimbursed? There's a certain amount that they get for travel, for a car allowance, and then if they go to a distance of
After 50
50 miles, then they get reimbursed. And that's something we can take a look at. You know, you take a look at, you see who does drive their car. I mean, I see the public director, public works director, city manager, community development, but some of these other departments, I don't see it. So I think that should be discussed also further. That's it.
Any other comments or questions of Molly on the items for additional discussion? Okay, thank you, Molly. Appreciate it. Are there any comments from the audience as it relates to this item? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
So I am membership dues compared to